Hey, everybody. Welcome to With Thunder's Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to discuss the events and ideas that will shape our uncertain future. I am your host and resident Mike Wrangler, Steve, along with my co host, Zach. What is up?
Mike Wrangler, huh? Did you drop it again?
No, I was just fucking wrestling it around while I was talking, doing the intro, being like, shit, it's not the right spot.
I want to get
I
an
like
arm.
being able to move it around a little bit.
Yeah, I want to get an arm, but I gotta wait.
Yeah.
It's only like
I
$13.
plan to
But
reposition mine.
yeah,
And then just fucking lazy.
yeah. I got a spot for it right here. Just goes on this edge of the desk.
It's a big,
and then
beautiful spot.
right here.
The sexiest spot you've ever seen.
Boom, boom, boom. You wouldn't the spot like you wouldn't believe.
You wouldn't believe it. It's the best spot. I always get the best spots.
Ask people; they'll tell you. Best spots on the desk.
It's gonna be an interesting 5 or 6 years, bro.
Oh, I don't want to live in this planet anymore.
I don't either. I
Can
say it all the time,
aliens
but it's
come take
probably
me?
maybe something we should not be broadcasting if we ever.
Oh,
want to get
I
ad
just
revenue.
meant that I want aliens to come get me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the other way. Like, literally not.
Yeah, but it turns out it might all just be a psyop. I don't know. Did you hear about the fucking Mexican alien? I heard that was proven to be bullshit.
Oh yeah, that was you could look at it and see that it was bullshit.
I
It was like
didn't see any pictures. I just
oh,
saw headlines.
it didn't look
I didn't
even
really dig that
remotely
deep
like it
into
had ever been alive. It was like thick. It was like a bad casting in like plaster of Paris or some shit. It was very stupid that it even got brought up. Apparently that's news these days.
I think
Anything
people
that-
are interested in it because, like you, they want a fucking way out.
Mm,
Because the reality is that like our entire material existence is dependent on an ever expanding supply of like raw materials and energy,
mm,
and we're at the limits,
yeah.
the planetary limits of extracting energy and raw materials.
If the aliens were
And
wise,
therefore,
they would stay away from us.
yeah, therefore our system is in decline and it's contracting, and there's all sorts of kind of psychological triggers. Have you ever seen a fucking junkie who's like hard up for a fucking fix?
No.
Yeah,
Avoided that for the most part.
I'm not around. I haven't been around it a lot.
Yes, if they are, I just didn't know because I wouldn't know what to look for.
No, you would know when they're like fucking. You see like a level of desperation in someone's face
Mm.
when they're genuinely like fucking like, no, I don't think you understand. I need this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why there's a lot of haters. I probably was online a little too much the last couple days, and
Imagine that.
No, I mean I've done a pretty good job, right? I was off grid for 4 days, something like that.
Steve in the comments.
Sometimes. No, but I was gonna say that, like, yeah, I spent a little too much time there, but it's fierce. All the all the people now coordinated effort to reject any talk of like degrowth. They're like,
No,
what
I
do you
didn't.
want to do?
No,
Just
man, I didn't know
murder
about that.
everybody.
Like, no, we want to stop having so many children. It's a lot easier than that.
Well, no, even just it's become just kind of extensions of other political fights.
Yeah, but
It's
in the
not-
stupidest way. It's like, no, we're not saying that we should murder anybody or anything like that. Just stop having so many goddamn children, you freaks. One per person is enough. Especially
Yeah,
if you're
it
wealthy.
satisfies that biological itch, right?
Yeah, well, especially if you're wealthy. Like that you're fine. Like there are other people in parts of the world where it's much poorer, where they're going to have a lot of kids to just so hopefully one or two of them makes it to adulthood. Let them do their thing. You have your
Yeah,
two.
and even so, there's a lot fewer places like that now than there were when we were like in school.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like in grade school and shit, like 2030. I remember having to read, National Geographic articles about famine in Africa and shit.
Yeah.
Which of course was never just like famine, right? Like product of imperialism and economic exploitation and so on, as we've discussed.
One coup or another.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which we need to do an update on coups because I'm fascinated with it. And we may talk today, kids, Shooting the Poodoo Thursday stream, proper Shooting the Poodoo.
Proper Shooting the Poodoo.
And it's episode 35, I believe.
4.
34.
34.
Excellent. Shoot the Poodoo episode 34. We're going to talk about AhSoKa episode 7, the penultimate episode. Be pretty good discussion, I think. And we're going to talk about Bulgaria because there's a news item that came up. And we also said on Monday we were going to discuss the writers' strike and
Very briefly.
potential end to that and concessions made by the giant evil corporations.
It hasn't actually been completely solved yet, but we'll cover that.
Yeah, I figured it wasn't.
Yeah.
I thought some of it must have been premature.
Yeah, it's never.
They're probably like, okay, we'll give you at least this much, and they're like,
yeah, we'll keep bargaining. You guys go back to work.
Yeah,
basically. But yeah, Bulgaria. We can go ahead and get started on that right now.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Crux News. Very horrible with police during a protest in Sofia, which is the capital of Bulgaria. Protesters called for the closure of NATO military bases. Seems reasonable enough. The Vazrozdan, best I can do, revival party is protesting against Western policies. Vazrozdan, that sounds good, right?
I know they're not very long, but like Crux has a real fucking problem with it. At least they seem to have slowed down the text a little bit. So I remember past videos we struggled like to narrate it or whatever.
Yeah.
But the music is like incredibly loud.
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
And I was finding it hard to hear you, but there could be other reasons for that.
Oh, okay. Let me see. I'll just load.
I mean, I can also read and anybody else can read, but
it's true. I mean, I could just lower the volume on the feed like to half. There we go. We'll still hear it as loud, but they won't. Vazrozdan also opposes Bulgaria's support for Ukraine. Seems legit. Protesters gathered and waved Bulgarian and Russian national flags. Well, now we see why they wanted to stop it. And that's that.
Yeah. So I saw that in my YouTube shorts, which is ultimately what like sends me down rabbit holes of actually like learning more about something. So it's not complete garbage, but that came across my shorts feed and prompted this discussion because I was like, wait a second, why are they being portrayed as far right? And then it's like, oh, because they don't want Bulgaria to be involved in the Ukraine war, and they were waving Russian flags, and what was the other one? Oh, they protested against NATO, right? And so they're far right because they're protesting against the West.
Yeah. In a similar protest, no, I think it's in this protest actually. They ended their protest at a monument to fallen Soviet soldiers, and if you couple that with the Russian flags, you can see it's not that they want the war to end with Ukraine or not to support the war with Ukraine. They want to not support Ukraine specifically, which is, I mean, kind of within their rights to want that,
And I think you have an article that in the show notes that I don't think we're going to get to today. We might if we have time. We're actually ahead of schedule because we started before 9.
We did. It's pretty short, so yeah, we could definitely get to it.
Yeah, but I was going to say there's an article about the grain export. So like they have an economic interest in wanting to not fuck around with that shit, and also a security interest, right?
Yeah.
And so there are NATO bases in Bulgaria.
Yes, and they're talking about making a new base in the near future. I think in the next year or two.
Right. And so like I'm seeing a parallel between, they keep calling them nationalists, and from what I can tell, and we're going to show some sources, they are indeed like nationalistic.
Yeah.
I don't think nationalism necessarily is necessarily a bad thing. I think in a lot of cases it's necessary. I think we did this example, right? Like American nationalism or American chauvinism is like not the same as like an oppressed, formal colonial state like asserting its national sovereignty, right, in the international space.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, we're
that kind of nationalism. I still think that nations are a terrible way to organize society,
yeah,
human societies. Um, but because territories, transcend biogeographical features,
right.
cultural features, and other kinds of natural ways of organizing within a landscape.
Yeah, and on top
Um,
of that, it tends to be that the places that we use to designate borders also are where there are extremes. Like when we talk about mountain ranges and stuff, you tend to have one side of the mountain range is lush and nice, and the other is garbage. For a long time due to the rain
mhm.
shadow effect, and then you get things like like rivers, and everyone wants to control the river, and so that's way
Yeah.
more important than the mountains out in the middle of nowhere. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like, nations are not the best way to organize ourselves politically. When there's, as we discussed in previous videos, so many other kinds of ways of conceiving of how people belong together and interacting with each other in a landscape economically, I think is fundamental.
yeah,
And nation states often borders are carved by people who
disinterested third
have
parties.
an interest in dividing them up.
Yeah,
Right, or
yeah,
dividing up the access to resources among victor powers or whatever it is, right?
right, right.
But I kind of saw a parallel between this and what's happening in Niger, right? Like, because
Mm.
just this week, not to do an update. I mean, I guess we could have done an update on that too, but like my understanding is that they succeeded and got agreement from the French military to leave.
Yes, that is my understanding as well, and they should be out of there. I think it's within the year.
It's interesting. And
Mm.
then, so these are like, hey, we don't want NATO here, is similar to being like in Niger. I mean, not quite identical, but like pretty close. Hey, we don't
Yeah,
want the French bases here. We don't want,
NATO
NATO
bases here.
bases here.
Yeah, I mean it's a little
Um,
different since their country voluntarily entered into an agreement to become part of NATO, as
are they a
opposed to
part of NATO?
yes, they
They
are.
might be.
Yes, they are. I think it was
Okay.
2004 was when they entered.
Okay. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
Mind you, the
there's
people that were in charge then and the people that are in charge now are probably not the same and stuff like that. And we need to reevaluate. We like need to reevaluate your membership in these organizations every so often.
sure
Probably just that
in light
it's pretty dangerous.
in light of these developments in our
Yeah,
neck of the woods. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And the other thing is that protesters, the policies of governments, right,
Hmm.
don't reflect necessarily the wants of the people,
Right.
but the wants or needs of the ruling classes in those countries.
Hmm.
And I think Japan and South Korea are perfect examples.
Hmm.
There are sizable contingents of people who have been protesting permanent military occupation since the end of fucking
World
World
War
War
II.
II, right? They're like, we don't want these fucking bases here.
Yeah.
Generations of people, born and raised under occupation and saying they don't want the bases. And like, it's very rare that they get called far right, like ultra orthodox right wing, like basically trying to say they're fascists.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was kind of like an interesting thing that drew me to this. And so I'm like, oh, they don't want NATO there. So they're fascist. Oh, they actually don't want to engage in or be forced to basically, they're choosing a side now because they're a participant in NATO or a member state. Like,
Right.
they're kind of involuntarily choosing to be combatants and they don't want to be. Like,
Yeah.
they
Well.
might have some kind of so there might be some kind of like make America great again kind of element, which could be kind of fascist adjacent in terms of like you said they ended at a Soviet monument. So they
Yeah.
could be like, hey, things were a lot fucking better when like we were in the Soviet Union
Yeah.
and had
And
factories being built, etc. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, and harkening back to that mostly illusionary past is a great way to drum up support. Something I did find out from reading a bit was that the EU and NATO have started. They had a stop on getting foodstuffs from Ukraine up until I think this week or last week, and so they told their member countries, no, it's okay to buy shipments from Ukraine again, and the people, Bulgaria, the farmers, basically said like that's going to drive the price of our domestic grain and stuff like all the way to the bottom. We're not going to be able to make any damn money. How are we going to survive? And so they did something similar to the truckers up in Canada. How they blocked roads and stuff like that. They
Yeah.
did something similar where they had their tractors and they blocked roads and they had signs, kind of like stating their case. And when I read about that, I was like, oh, that sounds so eerily similar to Americans who were like, China's flooding our markets with stuff. How are we supposed to make any money? And it's like, yeah, very similar, protests. And if we're allowed to make that protest, then they should be allowed to make that protest. It's so like go for it. I kind of don't want to tell them like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, I don't know enough really to offer like I would think an accurate opinion
Mhm,
on Bulgarian agricultural industry and in kind of their commodity trading
mhm.
in the region. What I suspect is that Ukrainian wheat and other like grains, I think they mentioned sunflower oil and all that shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, they those exports, I think, ceased for a while under hostilities and like
Yes.
so what then they're trying to so they got in basically a privileged position because they're like, oh shit, like all of that stuff that used to be grown over there isn't being grown. So the
Right.
stuff we're growing here is that much more valuable. So they're like, hey man, this is like you can't
We kind of liked it.
it does cause whiplash and it could
Yeah,
cause a
yeah.
lot of them to go out of business because if they're like, oh, shit's going to be really good because this is going to go on for a while, they might have
That
been persuaded to take on more debt, buy more fertilizer, expand production,
right.
or whatever to meet this like anticipatory need.
Yeah.
And then that just got fucking pulled out from under them and they're like, I'll fucking go bankrupt, which is
Yeah.
the plan. Is because
Right. Yeah.
large agricultural interests in Western Ukraine are probably eyeballing fucking good land in Bulgaria, and when all push comes to shove, it's ultimately controlled by giant corporations that are going to serve the ruling class and ensure that the ruling classes get fed while the masses prey on each other.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of
Well,
maybe I
and
always
we've
construct dystopias in my mind, but like it seems plausible.
you don't need to. You just look around and put them together. Well, we've discussed in the past how farmers don't turn on a dime. They basically are like
Yeah.
thinking, especially anyone who's growing um, a non-annual crop. They're thinking 5, 10, 15 years out. And
Yep.
even with an annual crop, you got to get the fertilizer that's proper for your product. You got to get all the things that you need in order to make sure that the insects aren't there, and that costs a lot. And so I have a feeling that
Yep.
you're probably
Or agricultural
probably
implements that have 10-year fucking notes on them,
yeah,
or
yeah.
plants and equipment. They're like, oh, hey,
Oh yeah,
we could build a plant here because we don't have access to that plant there anymore, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
we used to just ship our sunflowers to the plant in Ukraine because it just was better that way. But now,
Right.
like, we can actually we're expanding
Oh, like
production. We can build a facility. I
yeah.
don't know, but I'm
Right,
just
right,
saying
right.
you're correct
Well, no,
in
it's easy to make some very generalized speculations about it,
yeah.
and basically these people probably invested a lot of money because certain crops require certain equipment in order to properly, pick and transport, and that's a lot of freaking money. And so now they're
And
probably finding themselves fucked.
And even if they didn't, they perhaps got wealthy. Like if they didn't expand their debt, expand their operations in
Hmm.
anticipation of having these inflated prices due to the political situation.
Hmm.
It could also just be like, hey, that was really fucking nice. Like
Getting this
I
extra
want to
money.
actually get fucking paid well to do what I do.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And they could be like, don't take that away from me. What the fuck?
I was
They're
finally
just
getting paid what I'm
protesting.
worth.
But what makes them far right if they're just like
It
protesting
is
about
it
their
is
economic
this
interests?
it is the same group that protested a year ago and tried to storm the what do you call it, Parliament.
Oh, really?
Lot of the same people.
Well,
We're
how would that be? Because they've held seats in parliament for I looked and they've held seats since they were founded. I think they were founded in like the early like 2000 aughts,
Mhm.
like maybe 2006 or something. And they were founded as a party and they have members. I think they have like so you can look it up right now. It's like 15 or 20% of the parliament.
Parliament where?
The Bulgarian parliament is controlled
Okay.
by the Revival Party. They're not super fucking fringe. These aren't black shirts, right? Like, or not, I'm not getting the vibe of black shirts. I haven't dug deep enough, but I just think it's interesting. They call them far right, and then we're doing this language association thing like we did last time, right?
Yeah.
It's like with Joe Biden and the way that the NPR clip was, where it's like, Trump and DeSantis and other right-wing haters or whatever, other hate mongers or whatever the fucking phrasing was. It's very similar in that they say far right, ultra nationalist, all of these kind of like almost search engine optimization kind of keyword bullshit, where they like, they associate these words with bad, and then we'll say anti-NATO and anti-war in Ukraine to paint them as these like fringe lunatics, when in reality, like, I think on their website, I don't know, we have that as a source, but I couldn't translate it in Mozilla.
I've got it translated, and it's easy.
Okay, yeah, it translated on my phone, but I'm on Firefox, and I don't think they have it. You're on Brave probably, so it's through Google Translate. Yeah.
They control about 11.5% as of a year ago, which is when those
so
riots
11.5. I knew it wasn't a ton, but it was not nothing.
Right.
Yeah. So it was like, well, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. They called them like far right, and I looked on their website, and there's like one thing that seemed like pretty socially conservative around like families and LGBTQ issues. But other than that, like, they don't come across as particularly nationalist. I mean, they talk a bit about the refugee crisis, like the migrant crisis. But like, the migrant crisis is a real fucking problem. And like every political party has to have statements on the fucking migrant crisis because it's a really big deal. And FYI, in case you missed it, right? Much of that migrant crisis was driven by a Western intervention, specifically in Iraq and Libya and Syria. And beyond.
And Bulgaria gets a lot of the same migration
as Turkey and Greece,
as Greece and Turkey, because they're they're near bodies of water. You know, they're in this area.
They're not that far as far as like you're taking a fucking rickety ass fucking boat.
Like I gotta get from Lebanon
snaking along that coastline. I mean, you know that coastline better than me because your boat's been in the Mediterranean, right? Like,
it's very slow going and dangerous.
It's super fucking rocky. There's like thousands of islands.
Yeah, and things that are like almost islands at low tide, but not quite. You know, like just below the surface. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah, and so at any rate, think about taking a rickety ass fucking like boat with an outboard motor or even like a raft with paddles and trying to get through that in a storm when it fucking water's smashing against fucking jagged ass rocks. Like, Bulgaria's got a lot of the migrant crisis
because they have a lot of the borders or the coastlines rather.
And also they're weaker states, so their borders are considerably more porous than a state like France, who does have Mediterranean coastline, but all has also taken its share of immigrants through legal process. But like, as far as I know, there's not like waves and waves and waves of migrants rolling up on fucking French beaches and shit.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of people in France who are like, France for the French. Fuck. You're not going to take anybody. You're wealthy enough to like take anybody. You're going to leave it to these like 3 countries that can barely afford to do it. Kind of assholes when you think about it.
Nice. What else do we got on Bulgaria? Were you going to read this real quick?
Yeah, Bulgarian nationalists protest against NATO bases, want government out. Sofia, September 21st, 2023. Bulgarian police on Thursday scuffled with supporters of the ultranationalist Vazardan Revival Party, protesting against the policies of pro-Western government, calling for the government to resign and for the closure of NATO and military bases. NATO military bases. Hundreds of protesters opposing the EU members' support for Ukraine in its war with Russia gathered in front of the parliament building, waving Bulgarian and Russian national flags, blowing whistles, and demanding an early election in the country, which has gone through 5 polls in the past 2 years. Holy shit. That's a country barely holding on, it sounds like. Many shouted resignation, while fully equipped riot police protected the government buildings, including the defense ministry, at which some protesters threw eggs. Oh my God!
They threw eggs.
That's like Palestinian children throwing rocks. I'm afraid. Get a tank.
It's like maim those children for throwing rocks.
Bulgaria, which has
Fucking
sent
cry,
arms to Ukraine, lifted its ban on Ukrainian grains last week. And so I think it is a bit of, like, oh, we're kind
economic
of being,
protectionism.
well, yeah, we're kind of flippy floppy, like, hey, we're saying that we don't support them. Oh, we just sent them arms and now we're going to take their grain. Damn it. And then as a quote, you get Bulgarians do not want to participate in the war between Russia and Ukraine. We want to be a neutral country, from Nelly Tulyakova, who is a businesswoman and 60 years old. She said the Bulgarians opposed sending arms to Ukraine, which incites the war further, and she's not wrong.
So if we all protested briefly,
yeah.
if we all actually got in the street, not one of these war protests, a rage against the war machine or whatever, where there was like, it was kind of a circle jerk of who's who that could actually like either lives in or could make the travel to Washington, D.C. Wound up being like, I mean, I don't want to knock it. Like, it does take a lot of work to organize an event like that. But like, they organized a pretty decent event, but like with very low turnout. Like maybe what I saw from live streams and shit of people actually there, like to promote it. So kind of not like obviously media propaganda, right? If on the ground folk, it was maybe a few hundred. And that was for supposedly a big rally. So like if these guys are like being faced off with fucking riot police and throwing eggs, right?
Rotten eggs.
Because they don't want to be involved in that conflict, much like we all don't want to be we don't want to send weapons. It comes up all the time. The fucking time. It's like, we could spend that on East Palestine or making our rails safer, or we could have spent it after the fires in Maui, and on and on and on.
We could fix the infrastructure that is failing and will probably like start killing people soon.
I mean, yeah, it's billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And even if we can't solve a single fucking problem with all of that money, it would be better to spend that money into American communities trying to fix those problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fucking absurd. But they call them far right ultra nationalist because the person quoted, I don't think is necessarily because it looks like they're just interviewing people.
Yeah, they were kind of interviewing people,
like party officials.
No, that was just
a sentiment that exists within the country.
Yeah, I think that was just a person on the scene. Yeah. There's a video associated with this if you guys want to watch it, but I didn't feel like putting it up. And so, I mean, she's just someone walking along the area, probably owns a business, might be related to grain, who knows? Let's see. The leader of the Revival Party said the last instruction that came from the Masters of Bulgaria from the U.S. is for Bulgaria to make a new military base. And then he later told the crowd, NATO out. So, yeah, it sounds like, this party's just like, why are we giving up part of our land for Americans to come in here and, get a foothold? And basically more surround Russia. That's going to bring war to us. So it's not hard to understand why a rational person would not want all of this going on their territory. But yeah, here's the part I was talking about where it said the protesters ended their walk in front of a monument to the Soviet army and clashed with police trying to stop them from getting close to the monument that has been put under scaffolding for security reasons. The government has decided to remove the monument. It's probably not going to solve the problem.
Wait, why is that?
Oh, just because this is the same monument that they went to the year prior. This is the current one.
So they're trying to remove the monument as a symbol for this resistance movement.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, seems like it.
Oh. Yeah, I thought you were giving me like, oh, look, they're trying to protect Confederate monuments.
Oh, no, I think they're trying to do the opposite, where they're like, get this thing out of here. It's stirring up the bad folk.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you were saying they were going to the monument, and it was like them trying to defend the monument.
Oh no, I think it was just a matter of like solidarity with that mindset.
Yeah, and so they're a political party, and so like if they're
Yeah.
speaking at an anti-war rally, it's because that there's a fucking sizable number of people in the country who don't want to be involved, which is a very reasonable position to have. It is a
Mhm.
position that what was the statistic? I heard. You didn't hear it. I heard it. So why am I asking you? What was it?
Oh.
I can't recall, but it was something like 60%. I want to say I saw Rand Paul, like a clip of Rand Paul talking in the Senate
Mhm.
earlier this week, and he cited a statistic, but it was something like a not gigantic majority, right? Not like 80%, but
Mhm.
more than 50% plus one, right? I think it was like,
Mhm.
58 or 60% of Americans or whatever didn't want to send any more fucking money to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so it's almost
Yep.
2/3 of
One of them.
Americans want to send nothing more than we've
Yep.
already sent. That's a majoritarian position. So like this party, they like kind of try and paint it, and this is the point of me even wanting to talk about this, because
Mhm.
it's just like it's fucking remarkable how the ruling class like has like just incorporated like every aspect of our like intellectual pursuits and curiosity and like ways of being, and like all of this is subsumed into the system where they try and fucking control everything, including like ideas and perceptions of ideas, right? Through saying anybody that opposes more NATO bases and more fucking
Yeah.
funding to Ukraine is like a Nazi, when you might have caught, and many other people covered it, and I didn't feel necessary to spend much time on it, but I'll mention just
Mhm.
for sake of the historical record, since we are the podcast of record for the collapse of the United States. That should be our actual tag.
The podcast of record for the collapse.
Yeah, exactly. At any rate, like for the record though, like earlier this week or last week, in very recent history, still in the news cycle, recent, Canada had invited Zelensky, and they were like, they gave like some kind of award or some kind of standing ovation, and he was like a guest of honor, but he was it turned out to be like a Ukrainian fucking legionnaire, basically like a Ukrainian who went and fought for Nazi Germany and was in the SS.
Whoops.
In the Nazi SS. And so in the Canadian Parliament, they were giving him accolades, and like right-wing circles fucking hate Trudeau, and even a lot of liberals fucking hate Trudeau.
Mhm.
He's more widely despised, honestly, in Canada than Joe Biden is in the United States. In terms of there's still like a cult of loyalists around the Democratic leadership who stand behind Biden no matter what. And I don't think there's much of that in Canada for Trudeau, but different system of government too, right?
Mhm.
At any rate, they invited Nazis in. So it's just, oh, cool, you're calling these guys Nazis because I saw something about anti-vax protests in another one too. So they're like, oh, see, they're right wing because they were against like government medical intervention or whatever. But
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
so
And the
this is
Vaz,
their platform.
yeah, and the Vazristan is not like weird. They don't have to go on Telegram or whatever in order to hide their activities. They have a website. Like
They're a
with
legitimate political party. You said they
you
have
know
11% of the
exactly.
parliament.
Heck, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
they've got a .bg and everything.
Yeah,
They've got their
they're a
platform
minor party,
right
but they're
here for everyone
probably
to. I mean, 10%'s huge. We fucking wish we had a party with 10% control. But yeah, they've got all kinds of stuff here. Their
ecology.
plan going
So
forward.
demographic crisis is one.
Yeah.
Oh, and this might be the other place where you can consider them kind of like Make America Great Again or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. They don't want
MABA, Make
more
America
immigration.
Great Again.
Yeah.
But I don't know, whatever the acronym is because they consider
Good.
themselves part of a greater Macedonia. And so they're
Yeah.
like, our project as a nation is not complete until we've rejoined a greater Macedonia.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's not a terrible thing either. If they can get the rest of old Macedonia to join them willingly, of course.
And it could be a regional separatist thing. Like we've talked about Cascadia, which actually transcends the US-Canada border.
Yeah.
And there are people in the Cascadia movement that are from the bioregion of Cascadia. There may very well be, just like there's Kurds in Iraq, Syria, now the Free Territories, because they actually won some bit of sovereignty. We should actually investigate that as a Big Monday stream and go deep on the weeds on that, because it's a good question that I am interested in. And then also in Iran, right? There's Kurds in Iran. And so, there's probably an ethnic contiguous ethnic population that just has borders that cross it up, which is why I said the nation state is a really fucking poor way to organize human societies. Because ultimately they probably all share a similar culture due to a shared ecology, because it's in fucking Macedonia. Is that what's that? The Balkans? Yeah, it's like fucking Bulgaria and Kosovo and Herzegovina and Montenegro and all those little tiny fucking countries they carved up from the former Yugoslavia.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Yugoslavia was a Soviet state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so some of that kind of like make us all Soviets again, or kind of nostalgia for Russia. It's like, well, before we turned towards the West and just basically became like a southern colony, because that's what they called them pigs before there was a BRICS. They used to call Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain were called the pigs by the European Central Bank and by the German Central Bank, and all these because the capitalists in the North, after the end of the Soviet Union, the contraction, and they all came up, basically that they were free agents in the game of being exploited by the West, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then they loaned them a bunch of money and said how great it was going to be now that their economies were liberalized, and like they had debt crises. Like Greece is notorious for their debt crisis. But they were calling them pigs at the time because they're like, oh, they borrowed more money than they could pay back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, but you kind of fucking sold them a shitty bill of goods, right? Just like a lot of folks who are strapped with massive amounts of student debt got convinced that if they just keep taking out student debt and finish their program, that they'll get this great fucking income on the other side, and never materialized. And you wonder why that makes people angry. I did think you're going to go through foreign policy real quick. Go ahead and do that so I can catch my breath and take a sip of this Widowmaker Double IPA by Full River Brewing.
Oh, Widowmaker Double IPA. For many years, the Bulgarian foreign policy was intoxicated by Bulgaria's participation in world-renowned organizations such as the European Union and NATO, and was presented as a decisive participation in world processes, and with an indispensable weight in international affairs. At the same time, our policy in the Balkan region was timid, invalid, compliant, and even cowardly. The lack of clear objectives and ideas, with the exception of the pro-Soviet and pro-Atlantic, led to chaos, low efficiency, and uselessness. It is difficult to find a foreign policy action of our diplomacy, which we can note as significant and useful for Bulgaria. I have a feeling this is an instance of translations not working perfectly.
Well, I think the translation, the way that their syntax is,
right?
I think the way they organize sentences.
I mean, it's a Cyrillic language.
Yeah,
and so there's.
Yeah, I know very little about it.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, there's obvious differences
about those languages.
They got funny letters, but
yeah, they do. They use a different alphabet. I think that's why it's not as natural as like Spanish or French.
It's still the same. Still the same. It is an alphabet. It is not, pictographs or anything like that.
It's Cyrillic, right? Is that the name of the alphabet?
Cyrillic, I believe.
Oh, is it Cyrillic? I always call it Cyrillic, like Skrillex.
Or Krillin from Dragon Ball.
Just kidding. Keep going.
Let's see. They have some other stuff they want to say. They want to have, or they think the current foreign policy is too vague. The goals are not clear, and they want to have their clear goals. I mean, they were talking about, reuniting with Macedonia to form a Bulgaria, which I think is kind of funny. If you want to become, the Greater Macedonia, maybe you should call yourself Macedonia when you're all done.
Yeah, man.
And they say that
proud people, an ancient people.
Yeah.
Alexander the Great was from fucking Macedonia.
Yeah. Let's see. Our overly tolerant policy has led to Bulgarian national minorities in neighboring countries feeling that the Bulgarian state has abandoned them.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like
exactly that.
Yeah, and so it sounds like they're one of the bigger neighbors in the area, and they haven't been able to help out as much as they would have liked.
And that could also explain why they're showing pro-Russian flags, because they kind of understand intuitively, based on their cultural and even family connections across national boundaries, to where now it makes it difficult sometimes to travel. I think they might all be under the EU, so maybe like
Anyone within
their
the EU can
passports are
travel within the EU very
just
easily.
freedom to travel, right?
Yeah, freedom to travel, not freedom to stay. But if they want to go anywhere east, that's going to get harder because everything to the east of them is not a part of the EU. Like they are the vanguard of the EU to the east. And so,
Yeah,
again,
because Turkey has been petitioning for a long time, and then
yeah, but they haven't gotten
like,
it yet.
no, you got too many fuck Muslims, bro.
Basically, yeah. I mean,
Basically, just like fucking President Polk when asked, well, we beat Mexico, why would we not just take their territories? Like, too many Mexicans.
Yeah.
No, I'm not even joking.
No, I know.
We beat Mexico,
It's
and the
like,
whole reason that we didn't just like subdue them into a colony or something is because there's too many Mexicans. It's
yeah.
fucking crazy that that's actually in the historical record by a U.S. president. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but it's just
No.
kind of one of those things where you're like, I mean, yeah, it makes sense, right? Like,
I mean, he's probably just like, man, we just barely got rid of the Native Americans. We don't have time to get rid of the Mexicans too.
yeah. Well, at that point, they were still fighting them.
Yeah.
That was,
oh, that's true. That was the 1850s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The main priority of our foreign policy is to maintain good and stable foreign policy relations based on mutual benefit with all countries and peoples who are well-intentioned towards us. And I think we can all kind of, share that thing like, hey, I want to treat people to treat me well.
Can you go up to demographic crisis? Because I do want to move on, because I do want to do a couple clips and then have a somewhat structured conversation about AhSoKa. I just really liked this, and it's like one of those things we can kind of dig into and do together.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Wait. Go back to economics, because their economics agenda seemed really simple. Yeah.
Click that one. Economics and work. Okay. And translate for me. Increasing jobs and building a functioning economic system. What were we gonna say?
I should be able to read some too.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just like protecting national interests by supporting a national economy. Economic
Local
protectionism
jobs.
is not right wing. Reduce
Small
budget
businesses.
spending for administrative purposes. That's also not like, I think cutting government largesse isn't necessarily a right wing proposal. Eliminate unnecessary redistribution. You could say like cutting social programs. That's not so great. And focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like American politics. Like, small business is the cornerstone of America. It's a lot of the same stuff, just for a different country. It's amazing how we all come to the same conclusions.
Yeah, and they're talking about increasing the budget by better managing state property.
Makes sense.
And now go to the demographic crisis, because like that's where you're going to see probably the most right-wing ideas.
Let's see. I don't speak it. There we go.
Demographic crisis.
Crisis.
Right there.
Oh,
you
yeah.
Might not have anything.
You might have taken that down recently for one reason or another.
I did, doing my homework, I wanted you to go there because I noticed there was nothing there.
Ah, nice.
So I don't want to say these guys aren't right wing. I think because I do think that there's kind of they could be considered having some right wing populist type framing.
Yeah.
And right wing populism is a response to the failures of neoliberalism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they are far right ultranationalist, basically fascists, because they don't want to participate in the war with Ukraine. They don't want to send any more weapons to Ukraine. They don't want to be involved in the conflict. They don't want NATO bases there. And so
I think that just makes them reasonable and rational actors.
Yeah, so the whole point in bringing this together is to talk about that, because there have been protests ongoing against it. We're not alone in the world, certainly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I hope that the people, I hope that I guess I'm hoping that the ruling class in Russia is kind enough to not care what our ruling class thinks, and to think of all the people who aren't making decisions before they start fucking lobbing hundreds of nukes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally have thought about, what it must be like to be a person in Russia, and not everyone is gung-ho for war. They've killed a whole lot of people who have expressed very public opinions that were anti-war. So like there's enough people for at least some people to get killed. Like for every one that gets killed, there's got to be like 100 that are just not going to talk up because they don't want to die. So I have a feeling that, support is not 100%, just like it's not 100% here. There's so many people in the world who just don't want war and just want to live life, and they get caught up in all this shit. And because they're in that country doesn't make them a bad person.
Right. Exactly.
I think we all need to remember that. On to the writer's strike.
Go ahead.
For some levity.
The WGA negotiating committee lifted the restraining order, saying this allows writers to return to work during the ratification process, but does not affect the membership's right to make a final determination on contract approval. The end of the strike doesn't mean that the tentative agreement is a sure thing. Union members still need to vote to ratify the contract, which will take place between October 2nd and October 9th. The news brings to an end one half of a double strike not seen in over 60 years in Hollywood. SAG-AFTRA still remains out on strike, and neither that union nor the AMPTP have announced any new bargaining dates for the parties yet. For more details on this...
Yeah. So it's moving forward. There's no real information on what's in the contract. As far as I can tell, I looked around for a little while. I couldn't find the letter of the contract.
I heard that the negotiators were happy.
Oh, good.
With what they were seeing.
Oh, good. I find it interesting that the SAG-AFTRA is still on strike, so that'll be fun.
I think even though the writers kind of were like, all right, you guys can go back to work now.
Mm-hmm.
I think they picketed an additional day.
They did. A lot of people stayed on the picket line, and some went over to support. Yeah, some went over to support that. Because, they had people supporting them. Including a whole bunch of people who played D&D with the crowds. Awesome.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Yeah, they went out and ran like a weird campaign where like kind of everybody, gotta, decide as a group how the game would go. And just to like entertain people and bring water and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about AhSoKa, so I don't want to get caught up on RPGs, but
it's only a minute. It's only a minute. I just want to cover
bring up something for RPGs.
Yeah. I just want to cover this one just because it sounds so cool.
How did you find this?
You gave it to me.
You
shared the main video. What are you talking about?
Oh, I shared that to talk about?
Yeah. And I just picked my favorite
show. We were going to talk about Mouse Ritter?
You put it on the thing, man.
Fucking fantastic. Because this is exactly why I was like, let's not necessarily derail, but I wanted to talk about RPGs a little bit. Go ahead.
57 seconds.
Go.
Mouse Ritter, players create fantasy-style mice in a modern, non-magical human world. Ravens have scrying circles in the trees. Escaped lab rats from Nim have psionic powers. Magic is dangerous and can blow your whiskers off. Cats are far more terrifying than any ancient red dragon could hope to be. And humans drink their pumpkin spice lattes in their work-from-home countryside cabin and have no idea any of this is going on. What really seals the deal, though, is the Mouse Ritter Game Master's Toolkit. In less than a dozen pages, the RPG details a system for rapidly scaffolding, a game world to play in, factions who run the show within that game world, dungeons stocked with maps and treasure, and a wonderful treasure generation system that would utterly embarrass Chris Perkins and WotC designers with its elegance. If you're looking for a game that perfectly blends Mother Goose, The Witcher, and Game of Thrones, Mouse Ritter is for you. The PDF is free to download, but trust me, you'll want the box set.
And you can get that at mouseritter.com. MAUSRITTER.com. Why not? What?
Because it's sold out. I fucking looked. In fact, I think I shared a similar video with my children this morning on the way to school because I could put it in the cup holder and then they could watch it in the back seat while I drove.
Oh my God.
And I was talking to him about it because we have one called Amazing Tales, but it's just kind of, I think I talked to you about it before. It's just a little too loose.
No, you can you can still get it for free. Mouseritter.com.
Oh, you can download it.
Yeah.
It's a
downloadable
PDF for free, but you
For
can't
free.
get the box set. It's
No,
what I
of course not. You can't get well, definitely not for free. But no, you're probably right that they are out. But yes,
No, they're sold out. I looked
yeah.
because
Okay.
this video was like get the box set, and I looked. Honey Raptors is one, but the more important one is they made a whole supplement called The Estate, and it's basically like a whole fucking adventure of you just going through this like rich person's estate, and each like section of the building is like a fucking different section of dungeon because you're a mouse.
Mhm.
So like one big like wing of a fucking mansion is like
Yeah.
huge.
10 dungeons. Yeah.
Exactly. You're going
Awesome.
around maybe fucking organizing a fucking rebellion among spiders that hide between the floorboards and shit. Like, sounds fucking so cool.
Need to
I
take down
love
the
that
humans.
fucking concept.
There was a board game that I played at like a board game event, where you played as a stuffed animal, and you had to rescue your child who got kidnapped by evil forces, and like you would lose stuffing if you got hurt,
Oh
and you
shit.
could like stick it back in and sew it up, in order to get back health. Fucking awesome.
Yeah, do you want to read
We
some of this article on the Kevlar spider silk?
yeah, you gotta go get a beer.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
BRB.
6 times tougher than Kevlar. Spider silk is spun by genetically modified silkworms for the first time. Where? China. Chinese scientists have successfully synthesized spider silk from genetically modified silkworms, producing fibers far stronger than Kevlar. They were able to get or to genetically modify the silkworm so that they now put forth a different type of silk that is based on spider silk. And unfortunately, spiders have proven very difficult to harm or harvest in any way, so much easier to use silkworms. Let's see. Their study is the first to successfully produce full-length spider silk proteins using silkworms. They demonstrate that a technique similar to this could be used to manufacture synthetic commercial fibers such as nylon in a friendly alternate, similar in an environmentally friendly way. Because nylon is, of course, made of oil, and we're going to run out of that. Silkworm silk is presently the only animal silk fiber commercialized on a large scale with well-established rearing techniques. Consequently, employing genetically modified silkworms to produce spider silk fiber enables low-cost, large-scale commercialization. You know who would need this is someone who's trying to create a very durable ground army. Who had like a shit ton of people and needed to protect them very cheaply. So China's going to be making badass armor for all their foot soldiers. Let's see. Scientists have been looking at spider silk for a long time. I've been hearing about this for probably going on a decade now, about how we were trying to do this. So it's interesting to see it actually being done. Let's see. Spider silk makes a good alternative to synthetic fibers since they do not release harmful microplastics and are not created from fossil fuels. But turning to nature for alternatives isn't without challenges. Prior to this, the way that the silks are made are, let's see. They have struggled to apply a surface layer of glycoproteins and lipids to the silk to help it withstand humidity and exposure. So silk's not so great at withstanding the sun and water. And so now they have to figure out how to apply more processes to it in order to make it last longer.
Yeah.
And so getting closer to this, cutting back on using fossil fuels for crazy shit like clothing, which I'm all for.
Yeah, and I think specifically, I think what I thought about was funny about that is like, oh, what an innovation. And of course, like the first fucking thing is like, this will have excellent military applications.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's why they were doing it. Like, I do not
I'm
believe
sure.
this was like, oh, we just happened to find it. Well, no, I was saying, like, I've been following this for probably like a decade now. Like, not this exact process, but the idea of it.
Similar one, yeah.
Yeah, and it was always for armor. Like, that was the first thing, is like, oh, spider silk can withstand, like,
Dude, can you
bullets.
imagine having a bulletproof armor that like is like light as clothing.
Yeah.
The fuck?
You can't do that 100%. You have to have something behind it because it'll spread it out. But you definitely want something to stop it from hitting your skin.
Yeah.
Like it won't pierce you, but it'll bruise the shit out of you. So you still need like
Oh yeah. That's still a lot of
ceramics or
force.
something like that. Yeah, but ceramics are pretty light.
It's like people that
compared
get
to
hit
steel.
with beanbags and fucking tear gas canisters, fucking
Exactly.
losing eyes or getting killed.
Exactly. And of course,
Through
it's
head
still
trauma.
yeah. And then they go on to say it's a very new process, but they're definitely honing in on making it full scale as soon as possible, as with all things. You know what else I've been
Yeah.
looking into we haven't seen is fucking graphite batteries or graphene batteries. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear something new about that, but it seems to be a pie in the sky thing.
I think so. I don't think we're gonna get out of this fucking mess. I have no idea. Maybe I just have too much anxiety. Maybe shit will maybe 60, 75% of us are gonna be like Soylent Green. We're gonna be the people protesting in the street that get scooped up and turned into crackers. Like,
Yeah.
I have no fucking idea what our future holds.
You just
But
got to turn on your amygdala and stop thinking about the future for a few minutes every day and just relax.
I know.
I have a really good
I don't
amygdala.
even want to talk about AhSoKa at this point because we're almost at an hour.
We
But I
don't-
feel obligated to. Or maybe
Okay.
would it be
We
better
can-
to do a 7 recap the day before the fucking series finale airs?
I think we can make it quick because for me there wasn't a whole lot to it.
Oh, I had a ton I wanted to talk about.
Oh, you had a ton you wanted to talk about.
Because that's the way I roll. I can try and be quick. We can probably be done by a quarter after. Does that sound
Yeah.
okay with you?
Okay. We'll skip the video
Pretty high.
side.
What I wish that I
think
could
then.
do is I wish I actually had an exterior office. Because if I could fucking smoke a joint while I was doing the show, I'd probably stream for like another hour. Have a little ice chest or a mini fridge. Or
You just need to have a window that you can like blow out,
No. What I need to do is maybe get a fucking vape to hit fucking THC oil.
Mm-hmm.
Because that I think I would do in the house, but the smoke is too pungent and sticks. And like,
Yeah.
I don't want my house fucking reeking like fucking weed smoke. And also, like, I have kids and stuff. So, like, while the smell of pot doesn't really fucking concern me, secondhand smoke does.
Yeah. Well, and just your kids learning what it is very early and slipping
Yeah.
at school. Yeah.
What's
It's a good
that?
way and slipping at school.
What do you mean slipping?
No, just like mentioning it. Like that'll get you suspended for sure.
Talking about weed?
Yeah. If you do it too much.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're coming across as a fucking stoner, and like my fucking friend Jopa have like fucking an ounce in his fucking pocket when he came to art class, which wouldn't have been a big deal, except that we had a fucking substitute teacher that day, and that substitute teacher actually happened to be the mother of a friend in our circle's fucking now mother-in-law. Been his mother-in-law for like fucking, they've been married like, I don't know, 15 years or something, 20 years.
So AhSoKa.
So at any rate, the moral of the story is
You wish you could smoke inside.
don't come to weed or school with a bunch of weed in your pocket when like the fucking art teachers that are definitely okay with you going and being stupid on your lunch break and getting super baked and stinking like weed. Don't fucking do that around a substitute teacher.
So Senator Ziono, I believe is how it's pronounced.
Jono, or as I
Jono.
like to say, oh no.
Senator, oh no. I don't get him. He's not being very rational. He like claims that Hera is using it for personal gain. And it's like, I don't see how getting a hero of the rebellion back is personal gain. She's basically going after a prisoner of war.
Okay, I wanted to structure this chronologically.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's right at the beginning.
It's
right?
perfect because it's the first thing that happened.
Yeah.
It is to me, and because we are the podcast of record, go back to our review of episode 4.
Mm-hmm. It's like
I'm pointing at the box on the screen, I think.
Baby Yoda's like right over here. We'll do.
Yeah, it's the box up here when Baby.
Oh, I don't know how to add that yet.
No, we'll figure it out. We're working on it.
I have to do it in editing. You can't do it live stream unless
No.
I could.
We're gonna have to start editing.
Oh,
But
dude, I could do it.
We'll
live
talk
stream.
offline. I actually invested in some educational resources so that we can
Yes.
continue to improve. The slow march, not a lot, but I figured just a little, pepper it with a little bit of cash instead of sending super chats. I might as well pay myself, right?
Yeah.
And develop my skills instead of paying other people for their fucking time.
Well, and we can edit this down to something more digestible. Get little.
And
hits.
it's many more clips.
Yeah.
So there's more opportunities for us to get eyeballs.
Yeah. Your eyeballs.
At any rate, what were we saying? Oh, if you go back in time and look at our episode 4 review, I was upset with what she had done. And I think I said in episode 5, or maybe it was episode 3 review, looking at episode 4. Either way, I was like, she better have some fucking consequences. And then that next episode, it was like, oh shit, like Senator Organa can cover for you, but not forever. And like, this is a problem. They're talking about taking your command.
Yeah.
And then in fucking 8 minutes, they resolved Tara's arc for the fucking season and took away any consequences, which this woman here, we're going to show some clips from the Break Room, which is a new Rockstar side and secondary channel. They're kind of inviting more people on and having less structured stuff, more like talk show stuff instead of like Easter egg reviews and all that stuff that takes a lot of production time, because it takes a lot of time to script that shit.
Oh yeah.
And edit it and stuff. And they have like a team of like 12 or 15 people that work for the company.
One number that sticks out to me is a guy said it takes him 2 hours for every 1 minute of show.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Some of the longer ones, especially.
Yeah. And that's just like scripting and planning and, getting it down and like editing it afterwards.
Yeah. Like I watch some like philosophy type channels where they just do kind of like long form essays with visuals behind them, but they're just like talking about the ideas of one particular thinker in one particular book or essay or something. And they'll talk for 45 minutes. They have to fucking write all that. And then they have to practice it. And then they have to like do multiple takes until they get the voice pacing and do everything else. And
the main thing they do, and I notice it from all the clipping, is they try to maintain a general tone so that it's very easy to go from one cut to the next. It's like you'll see them visually jumping around, it was edited, but like it's very clear, very
that's good observation.
good transition.
So,
I like audio stuff for some reason. I don't hear so well anymore, but I like audio stuff.
I don't hear so well either.
Yeah.
But I really was disappointed. I loved the C-3PO fucking showing up. I thought it was a really the music kind of again delivered this episode. The music in this whole series has been fucking amazing. And he really delivered with like his transition to like familiar motifs while basically being mostly original. And he hits on perfect, timing on it, 3PO. But you know what? A big problem for me is it didn't feel real, right? They're like, I recommend a court martial. And like you said, Giorno, he's just kind of like a cartoony kind of. And then I think of Andor, because I dream of Andor all the time. Think of just the conversation of the Imperials talking, having a discussion about, I think Generation Tech mentioned it somewhat recently, of how amazing it was that they can make it so fascinating and engaging to just seriously have a bunch of Imperial bureaucrats having a conversation about how they fucking divide jurisdictions. And it was fucking, you're like, oh, this is fucking great. Like, I want to learn more about this. Like, how are they doing it? What are they thinking? Like, how is this working? And it's so in depth. And this is just kind of like, oh yeah, you're free to go, even though like everybody can see through it. It's bullshit. I guess the point is to be like Leia, along with these other ones, wouldn't give. And that's I think exactly what I said in our review. Is I was like, is what he said in this episode was like they're acting like it's a fucking that there's no consequences, that there's no civilian control over the military apparatus. they're pretending there's still a guerrilla army when like they're trying to be like, no, a civilized society has civilian control over their military.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just warlordism.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
And at any rate, it was disappointing. I wanted her to face consequences. I think she could have been freed from that whole New Republic bullshit. And it could have been like, and there could have been just a scathing fucking, like, you don't understand, like, y'all are timid, blah, blah, blah. And this is going to be, and they could have foreshadowed the whole fucking New Republic missing the First Order stuff.
yeah.
And they could have done it in one angry tirade in a series. Another thing, in a hearing, everybody engages. And guess what? People in the gallery don't get to like be like, but what about this? Like Carson Teva's like, what about me? What happened on Mandalore?
Mhm.
You can't blurt out in a fucking hearing. And did you notice the 3 other people up on that panel didn't say anything?
Yeah.
Interesting character who apparently like that Mon Cal was fucking Akbar.
What? No
Well,
way.
because people like looked at the insignia and they're like, the fucking insignia on his shirt is a fucking admiral. And he said not a word.
It's terrible. I want more of him. Who doesn't?
Yeah. Exactly. So, like, I don't know, man. It's an elaborate ruse.
I don't have any evidence that that's actually where it's from, but on the Never Tell Me the Odds podcast years ago, they had a
Gibby Bindu?
character. Yeah, Gibby Bindo. He went out of his way to never say it was a trap, and so he one time did say it's an elaborate ruse.
You know what's funny is I actually was just, I've been so thirsty for fucking RPGs
Yeah.
that I was looking for them and they buried them deep on Saving Throw. And I remember you mentioning that they kind of like really didn't transition into Saving Throw very easily. And I found the podcast, I listened to the first episode. I listened to like half of it. I haven't gone back to it yet to finish or to watch the other 4 episodes because I think there was 5 total.
Mhm.
But it's the first one where they're like, "Ooh, hey,
We took away the drinking.
We're a family show now. Like, watch the F-bombs and like."
After that, I don't think any of the old the old players ever come back because like they were there to drink and have fun, and they're like, "Now I can't drink." Shit, can I have fun without drinking?
Well, also it's like, hey, this is something we do instead of going and spending a shit ton of money at the bar. We like come here and play fucking. That's what we did when we were fucking in college.
Yeah.
That was a Friday night, and granted, in college at Chico State, at least Thursdays and Saturdays were the big fucking bar nights.
Yeah.
And so Friday was kind of a recuperate from how drunk you were Thursday, right? And prepare for Saturday drunk. But at the same time, like it did provide an opportunity because I think most of the time we did drink. We just didn't get fucking crazy drunk.
Yeah. If you ever want to find them, though, it's StarWarsRPGpodcast.com. And then they're also on iTunes and Google, at least, as Never Tell Me the Odds podcast. So I've been listening to it on Google at 20% faster speed, so I can get through it.
Fascinating. So they're still recording gameplay?
No, they are no longer recording gameplay. They haven't been since like 2016 or 17.
Okay. But they have a back catalog you can listen through?
Whole back catalog, yeah.
Perfect.
Good shit.
Awesome, cool.
C-3PO.
C-3PO.
C-3PO says he doesn't need to show identification. And my immediate thought was like, is that just because you're so well known, like you're a celebrity droid? Or is it because like nobody else has to show it? You're a droid and droid rights are becoming an issue. Like that's the one I'm interested in. And especially given how strongly he and Chopper reacted to the whole measly droid or whatever it was, that they said. Like this series is focused a lot on droids and whatnot.
Yeah, maybe. I think that more was like that was a fucking Filoni like homage.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, you don't need to see my like Obi-Wan, you don't need to see my identification. And then they also pointed out that he's like, how rude, like when he on Cloud City, when he's like, Uta Tuta, like when he sees another 3PO unit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how rude. Or whatever. Like I don't know. I'm okay with fan service. I was more upset. Like, I would have been okay if he was there, if there was a statement made in her defense, but ultimately they determined that she fucked up. Because you know who didn't get justice in that whole scene? The two pilots that
Oh,
fucking died
yeah, and their families. I mean,
and their families.
I assume they get some sort of stipend.
And when in Andor, they can take 5 villains and put them in a space and they're talking about fucking work, and it's fascinating. And then they have this huge epic moment where, like, a character that we know and love, that we've known, right? Because through the Bad Batch, Hera, we go all the way back to Hera being a fucking kid. And we know her backstory and her baggage with her fucking dad and all of that stuff through Rebels and you know, all that shit, right? And we know her dad through the fucking Clone Wars, right? Like, we know this family and these characters and this legacy. And like, it's just like, meh. And it's all a joke, right? Like, Jason's like, when can I do whatever I want? She's like, when you're a general. And I was like, there better be fucking consequences. And then they just botched it. And it would have fit perfectly within them, the whole objective of the Filoniverse trying to set up and fix all the fucking shit and tell all the stories that need to be told to make the sequels make like a little tiny bit of sense. Right? They're just fucking fixing the sequels through like this whole time period that they skipped. And they missed an opportunity that could have been perfect because she could have fucking yelled about it. And they could have been like, we don't care what fucking Organa says, right? And that would have been much like when Vader in A New Hope, when Vader was like, when she's like, I'm on a diplomatic mission, he's like, you're a fucking rebel and a traitor or whatever he says to her, right? In like the first scene in the whole fucking movie, right? All of Star Wars, the very, like, one of the first scenes, she's like, oh no, I'm on a diplomatic mission. He's like, for fucking shit you are. He's like, you're a fucking rebel and a traitor.
Don't you lie to me, young lady.
Don't you try and fucking pull one over on me. I'm the motherfucking Dark Lord of the Sith. But inside, I'm the blackest motherfucker in the galaxy. But on the inside, I'm a feeble old white guy.
So I thought it was cool foreshadowing when Balin and Shin like ride up on Ezra and Sabine and the Noti. He kind of like, gets up and like saunters to a stop, and she goes like full bore and then screeches to a halt like as soon as she's slightly behind him. And I just thought that was a neat little bit of foreshadowing, because like later on he talks about oh yeah, your impatience is basically going to hurt you in the end. And so like you kind of see a little bit that she's trying to imitate what he's doing but not getting it quite right. And then later on he like gives her a warning and she completely ignores it.
Oh, their master Padawan dynamic was fucking epic. It really did work, because she kind of seemed like the little puppy that's always like, do you approve? Like, what do you do next? What does this mean? Like, asking all these questions and really absorbing his wisdom, right? Like, and it really good. And a lot of folks, I saw the biggest complaint. So I consider this like one of my favorite episodes. I don't know how you would rank it.
It's pretty good. I watched it like 3 times to make sure I was getting everything.
I just watched it for a second time tonight with the kids. I actually watched it on a school night because I wanted to watch it again before we did this, because I saw a lot more criticism, and it's the first time like I've undergraded compared to every everybody's like, oh, I'd give it a whatever out of whatever, right? I've been graded under like the kind of majority position all season, and this is the first one where I was like, I loved this episode, and other people were like, whatever. And I'm like, so I want to move into that, and I think this is a good opportunity, because a lot of people were really upset that Balin had no resolution or no setup to resolution for what he's doing. And I'm like,
That's what's called a season, a cliffhanger. Like if we didn't know that the actor was dead, for all we know, he'd be a major thing in the next season. So like if I were the writers, I wouldn't like reveal that until the very end, if at all. Like that could be a total cliffhanger for the next season.
Well, I think they need to show him a little bit. I think they need to show him finding some fucking temple or something. next episode.
Or whatever he's after. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever he's after. Or he could be stirred by a presence and it's just a voice and you have to wait a whole fucking season before you're like, whoa, what the fuck was that? He's like, you know, you've some voice that's like, you've traveled far to find me. And you're like, oh, what the fuck? And then you get to speculate all fucking for the next, you know, whatever, 14 months and decide what you want. But anyway, I mean, I didn't have a problem with that. I thought that they did move his story forward. Everybody's like, they didn't do anything. We still don't know what he wants. It's like, again, fucking patience, people.
Right.
Like, he did move forward in that direction. He basically told his Padawan, like, you are very ambitious and you want to do this. Like, this is what you want. You want to be the fucking powerful fucking, you want to be in the seat of power. Right? Remember when he was talking about when they were on Cetos and he was like, you know, we're making this journey, and she's like, what's on the other side? Or I forget the exact phrasing of the dialogue, but essentially she's like, oh, power? Like, are we seeking power? And he's like, no, we're seeking something bigger than just power. Like, we're seeking the beginning of it all, or right, the beginning of the end, or whatever. Basically trying to disrupt the cycle. And her thought was to power for her as an individual.
Yeah.
Right. And so she kind of had that traditional dark side motivation, whereas he came from being kind of like, he's like all those like mature political thinkers that like recognized pretty early on that fucking Bernie Sanders was a fucking bitch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Truly
basically.
wise man.
He got hip to the fact that the Jedi were all fucked up like way early, and he could be like, I really appreciate what they did. I really appreciate that happened, right? I'm grateful that we got to grow up. He talks about people almost who grew up outside of the order, like Shin and Ezra, as Boken Jedi or whatever, people who didn't actually have that same experience, who don't actually really get it. We've taught you everything we know, but you don't really know what it was like to be present in that institution, in those halls that are thousands of years old, right? With access to those libraries, with, you know, being surrounded by mentors and peers that were going through similar trials and being instructed in similar manners, and were developing or being passed down a philosophy, and being exposed to people like your Qui-Gon Jinns who kind of questioned that philosophy and probed at its edges and tried to figure out the boundaries of what, you know, the light and the dark are. And they didn't have that experience. They grew up in a fucking time where the Force was a tool.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Jedi supported by the government? Because you never see them doing work.
No, I mean, even Giona himself, you mentioned him. He's like, oh, the Jedi, false Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, oh, sounds like a kid's story, which is just, it's just such fucking,
he's young, but I mean, he would have still been alive for the Clone Wars.
That young. No, because they said he was a fucking, during the rebellion, he was in power.
Oh no. Is that this Giono from fucking the Resistance cartoon?
It is. It's his father.
Oh, it's his father. Okay, thank God. Not him. But anyway. Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't know that until just now. Parents. Hamato. So how old is he supposed to be then? 981. Oh, okay. Yeah, so he definitely would have been alive for the Clone Wars and all that shit. He would have known about Jedi. It's like, dude, it's not ancient, and everyone knows about star whales. Like, was reading a little bit about star whales, and it's like everyone who travels is like, yeah, they're a hazard.
No, they're a myth to fucking. It's a thing that, like, it's kind of like Sasquatch. If you go into some fucking country bar and you got some fucking old timer logger there,
oh, that's weird.
Some kind of Sasquatch story, I would probably listen to them fucking old timer Sasquatch story.
The thing I read was
like you have an old time spacer who's been around for a long time. Like he's like, oh, I heard that, you know, like I thought it was a story for a long time. I heard from a couple people, but they were fucking, you know, they were drunk or whatever. So I didn't really take it. And then I saw it for myself one time when we were in this remote place and I saw the fucking Starwell and I didn't believe it, but it stuck with me. And it's almost like an alien abduction, you know?
Oh, okay. The thing I read was like, oh, they're normal and like people know about them and they're generally regarded as a hazard.
Yeah. And the way that Hera mentioned it in AhSoKa, the first episode they introduced Purgle,
Mhm.
was like, spacers have been talking about this for millennia,
Yeah.
that like they're a hazard.
Yeah.
And they fucking kill people and that they exist, but like they're not widely known. Like not everybody sees them or interacts with them. But as far as their presence, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but either way, he came off to me. I'm like, all these things are like pretty well known if you like hop onto the HoloNet. You know, like, are space whales real? And they would have been like, yeah, look, shit tons of pictures of space whales.
Just Google that shit.
Just look it up on Wikipedia.
Just look it up on Wikipedia.
So those damn balls that the witches have, what the fuck are they, and where do I get one?
They're just fucking.
Are they like
objects for
lightsabers?
channeling fucking magic, man.
Yeah. I figure it's like a wand or a fucking lightsaber or something like that.
Yeah, or like some kind of magic gem or like pendant or something where the energy gets channeled through it.
So what
I
did
don't
you
know.
think about
Either
the
way,
final
I really
fight?
like the witches. I
Yeah.
feel like they played a lesser role in this last episode.
Yeah, for sure.
They did. I did think that connection between Ahsoka and Sabine was interesting. Hu Yang, again, an VIP. I felt in that first scene, I was like, holy shit, he's Zach.
How so?
Because she's like, oh, like, yeah, I thought we had a pretty good chance of fucking the Purgo going to the planet. And he's thinking, just numerically, there are so many fucking star systems in the galaxy. He's like, no, the odds are actually not good at all.
Yeah.
Like, how could you think the odds were good? Like, the odds are incredibly low. And I was like, oh, it's fucking Zach.
We're very lucky to be here right now. Oh, man.
I don't know. I think that they do the best they can. I don't think it's bad. I heard a lot of people complaining about Thrawn again. I feel like people built Thrawn. This is my early take now. Not really dwelling on a lot of the negative stuff. I kind of try to avoid taking it in, but I'm getting it just in like comment threads or like passing thoughts by people who don't want to dwell on it, but we'll bring it up. I hear a lot of this. The other critique I get is of Thrawn. And then being like, Thrawn is not Thrawn. And I thought this episode did a fucking fantastic job with Thrawn. Like, the whole episode was him as a tactician.
Yeah.
Like, it was him making military decisions the entire episode. They did nothing the rest of it. It's like, oh, where she is. It's like, okay, withdraw your fighters. We'll wait. Help me find her. Okay, we found her. Let's flush her out.
Yeah.
Now she's been flushed out. Should we send a pursuit team? No. I think she's going to go for fucking Sabine.
Yeah.
We don't need to send a pursuit team. Let's wait. That patience, again, to go back to what Balin told Shin, Thrawn was exhibiting that patience where she wasn't. But if you notice when she lost that fight, she did. She was not eager to run in.
Mm-hmm.
She was not controlled by emotions in that moment. There was a lot of hesitation from Shin in that fight, broadly speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to action. One of the reasons I said I think this is, in terms of it, is my favorite episode is because like I felt like the action, some of it was kind of like a little like like the fact that there wasn't a lot like on the line for Ahsoka when she's flying around, and like she didn't even have to respond to like, oh shit, I gotta fucking reach over and like stand up and reach over and like redirect the shields or something. She didn't do nothing. She's just like and then they show the CGI and it's like and like none of those blaster bolts fucking hit her. She didn't hit a piece of debris. They didn't even give an opportunity for her to like focus on it, and like they could have just done some digital effect where like she uses the Force to basically like fucking map it out like a driverless car. Right? Like, you know how they're supposed to create 3D models of a fucking...
Yeah.
She could use a Force to create a 3D model of her environment. in her mind like a computer and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
flown through it. And that would have been like, oh, she used the force to get out of that instead of what they did, which is just like she's being chased and she never gets hit. And then the droid takes over the plane and doesn't get hit. He's got 3 fucking fighters. She's a at least at minimum a light freighter. I think T6 might be a medium freighter.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, it's been modified and stuff, so it'll probably have better performance than an off the line fucking freighter, right?
You would
But
hope.
generally speaking, you have starfighters fighting a fucking, I put in role playing game terms, it has a silhouette 2 points higher or a point higher. Like they're faster. They have better weapons. Generally speaking, right? A fighter is going to be meant for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's meant to take
Whereas
down
like a
ships of
freighter
that
might have
size.
some defensive weapons, but it's not outfitted for offense. Right?
Yeah.
Although that flare scene with the fucking light and that lightsaber fight between AhSoKa and Balin was fucking on point.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the choreography from that, I thought Ezra not taking his lightsaber was interesting.
I have one thing to say about that,
Yeah, please.
and here it is.
So anyway, I started blasting. So I did see people criticize that too, right? Like, oh, he didn't take his lightsaber, and like,
I don't care about
people were
that.
like,
I care.
oh, he's emasculated like Luke in the Last Jedi. They didn't want him to be super badass and like show that Sabine is weak because women are powerful. And I'm like, no. Honestly, you know what I think when he's like, I think I'm home. I think I'm gonna get home. You know what I took from that? Although it could be like kind of evil foreshadowing, I think he's not going to leave.
Yeah.
I think that he, unlike like Ahsoka, realized not until she went to the world between worlds that she was trained as a child soldier and never really had an opportunity to grow up, and kind of like realizes that she's kind of in that like position where she's in that position where she's kind of like been trained to do that, so she should be doing that. I think Ezra, like, because when he said that, he was holding one of those Noti by the hand. They were holding hands.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that was my first impression too. Yeah.
Drew, oh, that was yours. Interesting. Yeah. So you think that his I'm finally going to go home is him breaking that Rebels thing where he kept trying to like make home, and they kept trying to be like, your home is where we are, right?
Yeah.
Like we are home. Like we're a family. And I think he might be like, I mean, realistically, he spent more time in that life with the Noti than he did with the Ghost Crew.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're attached to it because we saw it, but him as a character, he could be like, no. It's like I am able to help them do better just by my presence, by my ability to use the Force to fight the bandits, by my ability to make decisions. Like he's like round up. Right? Like they trust him. He's become a leader. He has helped them thrive. He has a place, right? And he's done that for a decade. When all this other stuff, obscure stuff for him, he's like, oh, I'm still trying to understand it. So you beat the Empire? She's like, oh, kind of. And we think he might be dead.
Yeah.
Right. And Zeb is training people, and Hera's like the leader of the fleet, which like the leader of the fleet,
for now,
all the more reason to not just be able to do whatever the fuck you want, right? And without consequence. At any rate, like I don't know, like I kind of got the vibe that I'm like, he might be like after that scene, after that fight, because why else would he not want his lightsaber? It's like, no, I'm good. I think he's been fighting without it. I think he fears it. And I think he's turning away from it because ultimately even a lightsaber itself is more than a defensive weapon.
Yeah. It's useful for cutting down logs, though.
It's useful for a lot of things. I didn't see a lot of trees there.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw very few signs of an economy at all.
I stand by my assessment that this planet is ravaged, and that's why people were willing to get into the bellies of star whales to get away. I do not think this is a happy place. Like we haven't seen anybody other than there. I mean, we've seen nomads, and we've seen like the 3, great mothers, but that's about it. No other sign of like settled down civilization anyway. Which is especially weird given that there's all these giant monuments. Like you don't build monuments without settling down. So I think they're like post-apocalypse.
Maybe. Any other parting thoughts on AhSoKa? Because we're like
Way over, yeah. No, that's it. We're good. Cue that funky music. Oh, damn it. I didn't cue that funky music.
I mean, we could keep talking. There was a lot of things I liked about it. I really liked the action sequences. I loved them. Like his whole like, even though I'm like, oh, he's kind of doesn't want the lightsaber because he doesn't want the responsibility. I thought also like the lightsaber could like signify to their culture
Mhm.
or to another culture. It might have like a taboo against it, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
There's a lot of different reasons they could say for like that being weird and for him making that decision to not take the lightsaber. I thought it was still cool to see him fighting. I don't have a problem with him taking a blaster. And as I heard someone else say, is that like, well, at first it was like, he's been here for 10 years. He's been living with these guys. They clearly can shut their whole, they have a procedure for circling the wagons, which I thought was kind of weird because then they made like the bandits who shared the planet on the wolves as like the Indians and they're like the pioneers or whatever. There was like that kind of like old Western circle the wagons vibe to that, which I was like, man, of all the things you take inspiration for, okay, whatever. It was familiar, right?
It's a tactic. It works.
Yeah, it works as a tactic. I did think that was really interesting. So they already have to deal with bandits. So I could totally see him being like, I don't need a lightsaber. Like, this isn't my first rodeo. I mean, I straight up fucking wear chainmail because like, it's not like I stopped fighting.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I stopped potentially, I stopped being in a role where people relied on me to be a killer.
Mm-hmm. Because yeah,
to achieve an objective.
So,
and now we just kind of get to live, and we occasionally have to batten down the hatches and close our little shell cars up until they go away.
mm-hmm.
Or sometimes we have to fight them if they ambush us. But generally speaking, the losses are few. It's not super tragic. We manage, right? And here he's in this chaotic situation. He's running around. He like fucking grabs. He's like, beep, 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 beep. And then he saw the alarm go off and it kind of almost freaked him out. I think he knew exactly what was happening. I think Shin knew too, which is why it surprised me. I think she might get left. I think that she actually does rejoin AhSoKa and the crew because they all flew away and she went off on a fucking wolf, which would take significantly longer to travel back.
Yeah.
Longer than it would take everybody else to get into T6 and fly there.
Yeah, and Thrawn's already upset about Balin not doing his part. So he's probably pretty unlikely.
He doesn't care about Shin.
Yeah, I'm saying he's pretty unlikely to bother taking her along.
Yeah, he doesn't care about anybody. I mean, she has tried to show loyalty. That's why what Balin said to her was so genius. He's like, hey, we're on different paths. Which is also like it's not a bad thing. Just because we need to split ways doesn't mean like we fucking need to hate each other. We're not having like, oh my God, so many insights into my own personal life. It's like we can go different directions and not fucking hate each other.
Steve just learned something about himself.
From Shin Hadi. It's those three little moles. And then they're fucking fetal alcohol eyes and all that. I don't know. I'm just kidding. It's the Eastern European energies. That's what it is.
I'll take Rosario Dawson. You can have her.
Do your thing, bro. I don't care. At least she smiled. She giggled. She like rubbed Ezra's face while she's looking at Sabine. Sabine's like, "Oh hey, I thought you were dead." Looking side eye, giving her fucking monkey eyes and shit. And then AhSoKa's like, "I know what you did." She's like, "But why would I miss this reunion?" Giggle, giggle.
I'm gonna stab you in the back.
Also,
with
them while I'm staring at you.
One thing I do have to say before we go though, is fucking Sabine's armor is fucking carrying some heavy weight,
bro, for real.
Every fight, I'm like, shoot her in the ass. Her ass is exposed. Shoot her in the ass,
bro. like, yeah, there's a few times, and she doesn't wear like a ton of plate. Like, at least like when
No.
Mandalorian's like, it's like bing, 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 and it's flying off of him. He looks like he's covered in fucking armor.
Yeah, head to toe.
She's got like a couple plates strapped to her, and
It-
you happen to shoot her at that. As someone, we just went shooting pistols not that long
Yeah.
ago. There's
Yeah.
no way at that distance you're fucking hitting someone into a fucking square that big at that distance.
Yeah.
Not willy-nilly, not with weapons. Blasters are notoriously not particularly precise weapons,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that their whole thing? Is they're not really precise, even with like a sniper blaster rifle. Like, it's very expensive to get them very precise because you're basically having to concentrate a fucking laser bolt into even finer, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of having like a bolt of energy that kind of like has its own edges and shape to it. You're
Anyway,
having to
yeah, man.
concentrate that, make it more coherent.
Like when they showed her put it out on the table, I just kind of chuckled. I was like, what is that supposed to cover? It doesn't even cover her whole torso. And like anytime she lifts her arm up, exposed area. Exposed.
Not just an exposed
she
area.
uses two guns.
Since she's a human, those are exposed arteries.
Yeah. She needs to wear more armor, damn it.
That's where you're literally the most vulnerable, where you have no armor.
I think she needs to get shot more so she can learn the lesson and put on heavier armor. She needs some character development, and that development is armor or black.
They ruined it when they
lightsaber.
fucking stabbed her and let her live. Like, you could have got to that same point without stabbing her. It's fucking dumb.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I really do like this show. I think it's well done. I think the music's great. I think Hu Yang is fucking great. I think Balin is great. I think the action sequences have been largely pretty fucking goddamn good. Like, I think the villains are great. I mean, I like Shin. I like fucking Balin. I mean, Morgan Elsbeth seemed more interesting in the first few episodes than she has the last few.
Yeah.
But
I saw it. I saw it said that she was just kind of there to give someone to Thrawn to voice his brilliance to. That was
Oh
it.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But she's a good actress. But she's a kind of legacy actress too. I think she's like related to fucking some martial arts star or some shit.
Oh, okay.
Like from back in the day. At any rate, we talked about AhSoKa. We talked about Bulgaria for a long time.
We did.
We really did. We're over an hour and a half now because we started before 9. Are we playing fucking funky music? Oh, there we go. Now I can hear it. I really like AhSoKa. I think it's a great show. I don't think it's the best show. Nothing will compare to Andor. I am disappointed that they didn't fucking have consequences for Hera. I am still intrigued about directions. I'm totally okay with them walking away from this season with some cliffhangers. I think not knowing where Balin is going, or like getting teased where Balin is going at the very end of it, is perfect. Because then they can decide, do we want to tell the story with a new actor? Or, right, like how important is it to carry on what we wanted this guy to discover and the kind of insights? Because they might be like, we were just going to tease the movie that they're planning a couple years from now with the dude who's doing like an origin of the Force story or whatever. They could be like, we just really wanted to tease that and like set up there's this thing, and then there'll be a whole different movie that explores that.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm totally fucking fine with that.
Plenty of room
If his destiny is to be left behind and everybody leaves him there, that's even more powerful, given that the actor died. Right, and now they don't have to recast him because he got a fitting end. And a fitting end, remember the name of the title of the episode was Dreams and Madness, which was the line he used in the previous episode. And it also kind of corresponded to his conversation with Shin, where he's like, you aspire to other things. What is an aspiration other than a dream? I dream of
Genie,
being a right hand assassin for the ruler of the galaxy. I think she might be the Heir to the Empire trilogy analog to Mira Jade. I think she might turn light side in the end. I think they showed her willing to turn the light side. If you didn't notice, AhSoKa never drew her lightsaber.
Yeah.
When she engaged her.
How could you not notice that? Come on, man.
I don't know. It happens kind of fast.
Yeah. No.
And it wasn't intentional. It wasn't like, I'm not going to draw my lights. It was just, she just started fucking kung fuing her.
Yeah.
Which I heard Star Wars Explained, Alex over at Star Wars Explained say all of the kind of like force using with like Ezra and Ahsoka using the force a lot. Did you notice that the lightsaber blade
Was
bent when he grabbed
pushing
it?
away.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, when he went and grabbed it, like the blade, instead of being kind of like uniform edge, it looked like it was being squeezed in two spots.
Oh,
Like
I kind of saw
the light
that.
bent.
Yeah, I kind of interpreted it as he was pushing it away from him, and right where his hands were, it was the most strong. And
Yeah.
so it was pushing the light away from him. And you saw that. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Which you don't normally see that. It's like,
No, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of a cool element. Like, oh shit, he's like, boom, and you can see like his force energy, like fucking moving the fucking blade.
Sounds like
That's
what I'm hearing is we should do a martial artist force users campaign at some point.
Oh yeah, I would love to do a martial artist force user campaign. I've also thought about just doing some Clone Wars campaigns where we all choose to be clones. Because that could be really fun to just do like a fucking 1 or 2 shot.
Yeah.
And you can just do mission objectives. Like, we got dropped off. Oh shit, this is all happening. We got to get to this place. We're like running up.
We gotta save Omega.
We gotta save Omega or whatever, yeah, or any of the Clone Wars adventures, right? Like, we gotta get to this communication tower and disrupt it so that the enemy doesn't get it, so that our, our allies on the other side of the planet can fucking succeed on their mission, right? Like, super easy writing, like, fucking weekly adventures when, like, it's that transparent.
Yeah.
It's not like, we have the mystery of who, whatever, did whatever, who killed whoever in the library with the candlestick kind of thing. At any rate, yeah, I thought it was a great episode. I liked a lot of it. There was some shit that I was just like, meh. A lot of Star Wars tropes. I don't need the fan service the way that a lot of people really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I look forward to the last episode, and I'm not being a hater on it. And as far as Star Wars content is concerned, a lot of people hated Mandalorian season 3. I didn't think it was the best thing they had done, but like, I didn't mind it. I don't mind kind of like what, and that's the thing about this episode that I wanted to say. It felt like an adventure. It felt like Zorro or something. And people were like, but it didn't feel like there were stakes. It didn't feel like at any point Ahsoka's life was in danger. It's like, they had these shows with these fucking heroes that would go on these. Do you think fucking the old Adam West Batman, there was ever any of the people watching that were ever like, you know what the problem with this show is? I never feel like Batman's gonna die. No one ever fucking said that.
People love Superman. He literally can't die.
He literally can't die. But more importantly, because like everybody's got fucking plot armor. Like everybody.
Yep.
And yeah, sometimes that drags. And sometimes they have to put characters in that like don't mean a lot, like Marok, right? He's literally just there to get sliced open. They did it in such a way where at least it like intrigued you, and you're like, oh shit, he has fucking Night Sister fucking spirit and shit. Like, oh, I want to learn more about that, right? Like they did it in a good way, but he was still just a throwaway villain.
Yeah.
So that someone could die. So that one of our heroes could have a victory, right?
Yeah.
Because most of it has been a stalemate. I felt like this fight between Ahsoka and Baylan, when I went into it, like I was like prepared. I was like, oh, Baylan could die.
Yeah.
I didn't think Ahsoka could die. I think Ahsoka could die possibly in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Dave Filoni's going to kill her. I think they have plans for a movie, and I could totally see her being absorbed into the cosmic force. That's why they've done the whole Ahsoka the White, and then she's had this big trial of basically being a legacy of the Chosen One and all this other stuff. Whatever.
Yeah, very true.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, we talked about Bulgaria. I think we should talk about that more. We did a little piece on the Writers Guild of America, the WGA strike, and tentative kind of agreements and things starting to feel a bit more hopeful than they have for 3+ months, 4 months, whatever it's been. It's been a while. I think 140 days is what I heard, so that's a little more than 3 months. So like some developments on that end, and we got fucking government making genetically engineered spider fucking webs so they can make super
Armor.
lightweight fucking fancy armor. And
Yep.
we had all sorts of shit today.
Mouse
It's
Rider.
been great. And my name is Steve. I'm your host here. And along with my co-host, Zach. And with Thunder's Applause Podcast, we like to remind you that when liberty dies, it often dies with thunderous
Thunderous applause.
Show me that
Dancing
Grogu.
baby.